A lot of people, maybe you, want to have some remote land to pursue a goal or a passion. Maybe you want to get into an off-grid lifestyle. Maybe you want to take more control of your destiny. Buying real estate is no joke, but we did it in a way that was mostly stress-free. We got a really good deal and we found property that wasn't even on the market, not listed. In this video, I'll be showing you what we did and how you can do it too. I should also add that I've tried to make this video about 3 times, inside, outside, in a box with a fox in my socks. It just never works out. So I'm really hoping to the higher powers of video editing, wherever you may be, that this one succeeds on the many corpses of the previous attempts. So who's this for? So this is for people who want to buy off-grid land, number 1. 2, people who can most likely pay in cash, although there's an asterisk there. 3, people who want to find really good deals, although that's kind of everybody, silly one. 4, people who are comfortable not using a realtor, or maybe you will be comfortable after I explain the process to you. And then 5, people in the United States, although this may be applicable elsewhere, but I don't really buy real estate anywhere else, so wouldn't know. So I'll be showing you what we did. It's not common, but it works, and I can tell you my experiences. There still may be value if you're not all of the 5 things that I just listed, but I don't want to stray outside of my own experiences, and I'd like to try to be in my lane as much as possible. I should also add that this is how most real estate has been transacted throughout history. Not that long ago, it was quite normal for you and your family to build your own house. There weren't contractors with websites and F-150s and smartphones in the 18th century frontier, nor would you have had access to a realtor back then. So while this may be out of step with the current way people do things, I think that's largely because of how much we live in urban environments now, there's a lot of precedent for it. And to me, it actually lines up really well with the off-grid DIY ethos. So we'll get into the how shortly, but before we do, I'd like to talk about the what. And specifically, what are you buying? Spending a bunch of money is pretty painful for me, maybe it is for you too, but it's really bad and really painful and should be if you spend it on the wrong thing. So let's talk about how you can get the right thing. And that's property that you can buy that many years later you will be happy with. And your friends, if you have them, hopefully you do, will want to visit you, and your family will be happy that you bought it and the whole bit. So we need to figure out what you want. Now, what you want could change as you learn more, and it should change. When you think of a car that you might want, as you do more shopping and as you start reading up more about cars, it might shift your idea of what you really wanted in the first place. And you're going to learn a lot about land during this process, so please keep your mind open. Having an open mind doesn't cost you a penny, and it probably will put you into a better situation. You're just not going to be as smart, now as you will be further on in this process. So let's get into it. Here's a list of things that I would recommend that you evaluate. You can add more to this, but I would really put these on there and make sure that you consider these. Lack of building permits, or very lax, or maybe lax for owner builders, tends to be something that's important. Not just about the home, but in some places, even putting up a 3-foot high retaining wall in a completely rural area technically needs a permit. Outdoor showers, larger sheds, carports can all fall under permitted structures. Now, if your point is to be independent, then you may want to look for communities with more lax building permits. Now, building codes exist for a really good reason, and you disregard them at your peril. But humans have built structures for tens of thousands of years before building codes existed. Now, sure, some of those structures fell down, but most of them didn't. And again, I'm really tailoring this video and the majority of my content, honestly, to people who want to assume some of that responsibility. Now, especially if you want to build with newer, alternative construction techniques and materials, permits will be hard, if not impossible, to come by. And I'm very big into the earth bag world, super adobe, it goes by a few different names. And one of the most disheartening aspects of that form of construction is just how resistant building codes can be. People learn all these great techniques and see all of these great structures, and then their dreams are just dashed onto the rocks of the permitting office to die. And it's really disheartening. So again, that's a big one to me and maybe to you. Weather. Scorching sun, snow that you got to shovel, a lot of wind, dust everywhere, muggy. You want to have an idea of the weather. Now, personally, I can't stand muggy weather and mosquitoes. For me, I just want either pure sun or snow. That's it. I don't like rain. I don't like cloudy days, but that's me. I have friends that live in Seattle, and more power to them. Now, be careful to moving somewhere that has big weather seasons that you're not personally familiar with. Seeing a postcard of a snow-filled town is a lot different than living in it. Seeing an idyllic lawn in a picture, you don't necessarily see the mosquitoes that are flying around in there as well. Bugs and critters. So speaking of mosquitoes, there's also ticks, roaches, spiders, rats, chipmunks, voles, moles, beavers, etc. Especially if you're building conventional stick frame, and absolutely if you're planning a garden, get an idea of what will want to come live in the cool new home that you've created and potentially eat all that awesome food that you started growing. Soil and dirt. Rocks, clay, liquefaction, radon. Now you can jar soil the material that's right on site. You can take a kit, $30, you can send it off, get it analyzed. Nothing is perfect, and the idea here is really just to understand what you'll be dealing with. Now, I have some rocks on my property. Actually, I have a lot of rocks on my property. My property is mainly rocks, but my neighbor has solid rocks the size of UPS trucks, at least the parts that we can see. And not only is that something that you need to understand that can change what you're going to do, but some of it can be beneficial. I didn't even know about gabion walls until I had all these rocks, and they've actually worked out pretty good for me. Social life, friends, dating opportunities. Friends and dating opportunities for your family members if you have family that'll be with you as well. So small towns really do have less opportunity, but I find that personal relationships tend to be cherished more because it's a more rare thing. So people tend to take it a little more seriously. Schools, how good are they? What's the travel time? For us, it's a 1-hour bus ride each way, and then it would be 20 minutes for us to get our kids to the bus stop. So that's about 3 hours a day that our kids would be sitting on a bus. Now, if you don't have kids, maybe you don't have to worry about it, but perhaps don't build a whole empire out there and then think about, I'll deal with the kids thing later. Medical care. Pharmacies, emergency care, physical therapy. Part-time, it's not such a big deal, but full-time, it matters. And again, you need to figure out the plan of, well, what are you going to do with these things? Water, irrigation, drinking water, well depth. Water tests can be done at many water district labs. You're going to pay a couple $100s for that. But get an idea, where are people getting their water? What are the access rights for water? Can you tap into that water source, surface water source? Or does somebody else own the rights to that? Climate change. So it's real and it's happening. And what's going to happen to your place? Is it going to be hotter? Is it going to be drier? Is it going to be wetter? Give that some consideration, because chances are the climate that you're looking at right now is going to look a little bit different a few years from now. Road condition. Do you need all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive? Are you okay getting stuck and unstuck? Does everyone who may have to visit you have all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive? Will a semi-truck, if that's how you plan on getting some of your materials in, be able to get into that location? Construction costs, material and delivery fees, labor fees, availability at all. If you're in a really rural area, you very likely will be doing a lot of your own things, even if you don't want to, because there's not a lot of other people to help you out. Neighbors. Carefully look for two-stroke motorcycles, gun targets, and trashy lots. So you can't pick your neighbors, and your great neighbors might sell out to total jerks. And the reason a lot of people buy large lots is to provide dedicated space between those neighbors, right? Good fences make for good neighbors, and big lots make for even better neighbors. And to be on the record, I don't have a problem with two-strokes and firearms, but maybe don't run them so much out in the dark. Does it speak to you? Does it make you content? This is really hard to put a finger on, or my finger on, but similar to the car that you really want, it's probably not all about practicality. Some of it comes down to what makes you happy. Looking out your window and enjoying the view is one of the things that makes life worth living. I get a chance, not every night, but pretty much every night, to walk outside and see the Milky Way. It's a beautiful thing, and I really appreciate that. Now, nothing will be perfect. You will need to compromise in some or many areas. Or maybe you don't have to compromise at all, but it will cost you a fortune. So don't go into this maybe with the idea of, well, I'm going to get every single thing I want, and that's what I'm going to look for, because you'll never find that. But just understand what you're doing. Keep your eyes open and know what you're doing and why you're doing it. You want to cut down on the unknown unknowns, to steal a Rumsfeldism. Variables that you haven't even considered. You can mitigate problems that you know about, but not the ones that you don't. You'll have surprises in this journey for sure, but you really want to chop that stuff down and have as many things, even if you don't have the solution for them, at least you know about them. Okay, so now we're going to start with initial internet research, right? So you're going to search for areas that have what you want. Now that you have an idea of the what that you want. Now, I'd recommend for searching in areas near where you are right now, if you'll be living in your current place and then building somewhere else. If you're jumping in with both feet, you can do that too. Now, the more rural a place is, the less internet knowledge there's going to be about it. We're used to everything being online. This is concept that I'll just Google it, right? But in reality, that isn't the case. It really falls apart when you move into really rural areas. So some resources at this stage and beyond are CalEarth. It's great for mapping and understanding shading and slope. AcreValue has online parcel numbers and parcel maps. Zillow, LandWatch, Lands of America, they're all about the same. Sometimes you see some different stuff on there, but they're pretty similar. Google Earth, Instagram, look for photos, hashtagged, for that region. Especially look at different seasons. That's your chance to really get a chance to see what do things look like at different seasons. Read up, search for subdivision information, look for online conversations about how people like it. Realize that some people hate things that you love and will love things that you hate. So again, that rural places tend to not have a lot of internet activity. If I sell you my property without a realtor, just using a title company, and we'll get to that in a second, the only place that transaction will show is on the county's website. This is where you're going to be able to make a case for the value, right, for the purchase price of the property that you're going to eventually want to buy. So let me show you some of the tools that I use that may be of value to you. Okay, so I want to show you AcreValue. AcreValue is a really valuable site, especially if you don't know where the parcels are. A lot of the times you can find yourself driving down a road and you look up at some hillside and you're like, wow, what a really cool place that is. I wonder how I could buy that. Something like that. It's a very simple question, but you may not know how to start on that. Another thing that may happen to you is you may find yourself in a situation where you have located a county that you really want to check out, but again, you don't really know where to go from that, and you want to start doing some research. So AcreValue is a great way to show you as you move between counties, so you don't have to fuss around with each county's website. Eventually you'll have to, but this will kind of help jumpstart the process for you a little bit. As we kind of continue with this, all of this data is public record, so this stuff is out there, and anything that I would show you is something you could go find yourself. But I'm actually going to be looking at one particular property that I don't own, and it's just a little shady to me to take that person's information and put it on a YouTube channel, even though it's public record. So I'm not going to do that, and instead I'm just going to use some static images that I've gone through and pixelated. Right. So, but let's say as an example, you're driving down this road right here and you're like, wow, what a neat lot, right? So this will tell you, if I was to click on this, it will tell me the parcel ID, right? So over here, the 70 acres, it'll tell me the parcel ID over there. I can see, this is the parcel maps, right? And I just entered Washoe County, Nevada. So you can do the same thing and you can get an idea of what the actual parcels look like in, for an area that you're interested in. Okay, so this is what happened when I actually selected one that I wanted to check out. Again, I don't want to put this person on blast with their parcel ID, so I went through and pixelated these things. But the big thing that you're going to see when you select one is you're going to see that parcel ID, and that's really what you want to get to, is what is the actual parcel number. And again, I'm talking about Washoe County, which is a county in Nevada, and then we're going to dive in a little bit into some of that particular county's online resources that we can use to learn a little bit more about what exactly is going on with this particular property over here, this 40.7 acres in Washoe County. All right, so one of the first things that I use, and this is the first system I came across when I just literally Googled Washoe County assessor's data. This is the assessor. I believe it is ASSESOR. I give you that as a guess of how to spell assessor, assessors. But what you want to find is you want to find a way to be able to dial in. And again, this right here is that APN, that's that parcel ID. I've pixelated it out, but that's what you're really looking for is being able to find that instead of just on AcreValue, because AcreValue is really just aggregating everybody's parcel information. But now you can actually enter it in here and see what the county has for it. This is where the magic happens. Again, I've abstracted away some of this information, which is something to consider when you actually go to buy something yourself. And this information is going to be registered. So obviously the information about the lot itself, you're not going to be able to get that off of the county's website because that's public information. But if you put it in your name with your home address, well, that's public information now as well. Versus you could put it in something that is maybe a trust or an LLC. This is outside my bracket, but things that might make it obfuscate your personal information a little bit if that's something that you're interested in. Okay, but the big things that we want to look for here, and Washoe County makes it really great, is down here where it says sales and transfer records. Right, so we can see over here a couple of numbers, and this the way these are displayed for your particular county, how much of this stuff is displayed can vary a lot. For mine, it's actually attachments that I have to open them up individually and look at them that way, so it may come a little differently for you. But you can see here that in 1989, this lot was sold for $38,500. Right, and then you can see over here that this was now $82,000 in the year 2000. And then over here in 2019, that probably was something more about maybe a switch between maybe a trust took it over or something like that. But this really lets you know that in the year 2000, that this was $82,000, right? So as you get more recent transactions, that's what you're really going to use to be able to say, if you find another, let's say this is, was this 40 acres, something like that. So if you find another batch of acreage out there, right, that's similar to this lot, right? It's in the same general area. It's got the same amount of water access, same road, things like that. You're going to be able to make an argument and say, hey, you know what? This I think is worth about this much information, and here's how I can back that up, because I can tell you these lots over here sold for this amount of money. So not only does that put you in a position where you have a good price to work with, but as you're negotiating with your potential seller, they're there too, right? You're able to make a pretty compelling argument for your price. You're not being shifty about it. You're not basing your stuff in total crazy nonsense land as far as the price goes, and you can make a fairly evidence-based argument for why the price that you're approaching your seller with is much more reasonable. Now, what this doesn't tell you though is why it was sold for that amount, and that's an important thing, and that's why you want to get a few different price points. So we don't know that this $82,000 right here, that the reason that was sold was maybe I wanted to sell it to you because you're my friend, so I'm going to sell it a lot cheaper. Some of these things aren't really known why it was sold that way. So that as you incorporate more data into your kind of your comparables, then that's going to give you more chance to spot the outliers and more of an average when you go to present that purchase price. But this is really the key, and this is what you want to be able to see. And this is also the place that you're going to get the address from as far as who are you going to contact. Right? Who's the person you're actually going to send that letter to and say, hey, I'm interested in your 40 acres located in blah, 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 Washoe County. So this is all public records. And again, we went through AcreValue. We went through the county, Washoe County's GIS, their geographic information systems. And then we went directly into their assessor property data role and found it by using that parcel number up here that we've pixelated in order to be able to track through this thing and understand, from traveling down that road and then being able to identify the parcel that we were looking at, to being able to bring up the sales price and also the people who are the current owners. Okay, bust out your car keys. It's time to travel. So sitting around the internet dreaming up ideas is cheap and easy. Everyone does it. For every 1,000 people who are interested in buying off-grid land, I'd be stunned if a single one went through with it. Now that's totally fine. Part of researching, part of learning is to understand whether or not you want to continue or you want to hit the eject button and bail out as you learn more. Now, there's plenty of things that I'm interested in but we'll probably never pull the trigger on, and that's totally okay. Again, that's one of the reasons you're learning, right? Is to see, do you really want to do this? But if you're this far along and you want to keep moving forward, again, grab your car keys and it's time to hit the road. Again, for rural areas, the internet access and phone connectivity can be really patchy. So you're going to want to print out paper maps, and it sounds really old school, of what you want to check out, like real paper and pencils and stuff. So a note on realtors, again, I didn't use one, but we can get more on that later. If you want to use one, this is where you'd probably be meeting up with them too. But if you've done a lot of work at this point, a lot of that work is the stuff the realtor would have done for you. So maybe hear me out, finish the video before you reflexively pick up the phone and go for the realtor. But again, more on that later. So it's time to drive around and look at some of the lots and the counties that you saw online. So you're going to mark those on your map before you head out onto your pretty interesting road trip that you're about to do. Now with CalTopo or mapping software of your choice on your phone, make waypoints and also on your little paper map of lots that you like and things you're interested in as you're driving around and standing in front of them, right? You're here, you're in that space now. So we want to capture that, right? Things you didn't notice online, but now you do. It's hard to see the view and the terrain and the majesty of certain areas in a picture. So take photos of signs, especially signs with phone numbers. If you get a chance, stop and talk to people. Be friendly. You may learn things, and it's possible you're talking to your neighbor for the next 40 years. It's also possible that person may have a lot that they want to sell, or they know that somebody maybe passed away, and that really happened a few months back in my area. And now that family needed to sell that land. So have a notebook, scribble lots of things down. Again, take pictures. Here's the special part. This is the big reveal here. Look at lots that are not listed for sale. Now this ties in with the screen capture stuff that I showed you a few minutes back, right? You probably know people, and I know people, who bought something with the absolute best of intentions, but we're never going to really get around to using it the way that we thought we would. So that could be a kitchen gadget, it could be a treadmill, or that could be a few acres of land. And now you have it, and you're not ready to list it for sale. And a lot of that is psychological. So if I sell that treadmill that I don't use, I'm making a mental decision that I'm really not going to use that treadmill. Like that part of my life is over, and that I wasted my money on that, and I'm giving up on my goal of getting fit, right? I'm like, well, I'm just not going to be that person. I'm not going to do it. But if someone walked up to you with a ball of cash, or walked up to me with a ball of cash, I might just sell that treadmill, right? So more on that later. Look for lots with nothing on them or just junk, right? Look for things that have no tire marks, overgrowth on the driveway, or again, no driveway at all. For large rural areas, you may need to spend an entire weekend not doing much, but driving around, taking photos and recording waypoints during the day, because it can take a long time to drive around some of these big areas. In your hotel or the back of your camper at night, you can take that and you combine it with the internet research that you did before, right? Transpose your GPS waypoints onto parcel maps to understand what you're looking at. You know, like you have the location of where you are from the GPS coordinates. You can line that up with the parcel map and see what that parcel number is, right? Now remember, you're only seeing one season at a time. New England is absolutely gorgeous in October, but go back in January and you'll see why I don't live in New England anymore. In central Mexico, January is absolutely gorgeous. Come back in August and you're literally sweating in the shower, and you'll see why I don't live in Mexico anymore. So if you don't have experience with a particular climate, consider coming back for the opposite season, for the hard part. So now we're at the approach. And at this point, you should have internet research about a particular area regarding utilities, building codes, community master plans, and at least a ballpark idea of what you want and what you're going to get and not get by living there and by building there. 2, you have a list of non-listed properties, parcels, that you're interested in purchasing, right? That you're like, I like that one over there. And you have specific pricing data about equivalent lots, which you did by going through that county website and seeing things that sold. Now you're going to write handwritten, hand-addressed letters to those owners. That data, again, being available on the county's website. If you're a homeowner, then you know you get endless letters from profiteers, mortgage companies looking to make a buck. But I'll bet you a shiny dollar, that you've never gotten a handwritten letter from a would-be buyer. And if you did, I'll bet you remember it. So in your letter, be honest, direct, and polite. State that you can make a cash offer. Now that was about the asterisks from before. Right now, I don't know about owner carry situations, but if you want to go that route, hopefully you did a little bit of homework about that too, and you want to address that head on. If you're not going to be paying in cash, at least be able to say that you can do the down payment and make the terms that you're looking for very clear. State why you like the property and what you're going to do with it, making a personal appeal. If you say you're buying it to build a home with your own two hands and raise a family, a lot of people are going to be supportive of that, especially the kind of people who already own rural land, and maybe that was their plan as well. So I wrote 11 letters, and I got 7 back, 3 of which I negotiated prices on. That's a really high rate. So on realtors and title companies. So a realtor's job is primarily to connect buyers and sellers. So if you did everything in this video so far, you've done way more than a realtor is going to do for you. And often, realtors are not found in rural places. They can be hours away. The closest realtor to me is a 2-hour drive, and they would have made a minuscule commission on my property. They definitely would not have put in the legwork that I did. So here's reasons to not use a realtor. You're comfortable doing a lot of the legwork, mostly everything I've described up until now in regards to research, travel, and letter writing. You're buying raw land with nothing else on it, or let's just say nothing else on it, right? You're comfortable negotiating what's probably a really good chunk of change. So reasons to use a realtor. The property is already listed by a realtor, you found something that's already listed and the seller has representation already. In which case, you'll want to get your own realtor to serve in your interest. There's not a lot of ways around that one. 2, there's a home or other significant property on the land. 3, you don't want to do any of the legwork, right? Kind of 3, 4, maybe you have a really good friend or a family member who is a realtor, right? So that just makes it a little easier. 5, you don't want to negotiate prices. 6, you need other ancillary services for the transaction that you don't know how to source. Now, realtors know the inspectors, they know the lenders, they know everyone, especially realtors that have been in the game for a long time. If you're doing raw land for cash, you probably don't need any of that, but if it's anything more involved, then you most likely will want someone who's been around the block a few times in that area. Now, either way, whatever you choose, you must absolutely use a title company. You cannot get around this one. Don't. These are folks who will facilitate the transaction. They will give you an escrow number and open a file. They will make sure that the property can be sold and will transfer the title to you. They will also make sure that the money gets to the seller. So they're the people who are going to make sure this actually happens, right? But really, to open escrow, you need to have your contact information, hopefully you have that, the seller's contact information, which you had because you contacted them, a raw land purchase agreement, which you can get from the internet or from the escrow shop, the title shop, and the money specified in the contract to open the escrow, which is, something you can adjust, but typically it's around 10% of the final purchase price. So a couple other random tips. Unless you need to send expedited overnight mail, don't. It costs a lot. A lot of times it won't actually affect any of the schedules, so don't bother. We saved a lot of money by bypassing a realtor, but it was unimproved property. I personally walked it, took GPS coordinates and transposed those onto the map. There were also survey markers that were existing. If you have anything more complicated than that, or again, you just want to use a realtor because it's going to make you feel more comfortable, by all means, do it. Do it. I've heard some folks say that they can get loans for raw land, but I really don't have any information about that. And anecdotally, I always thought it was pretty hard, but I'm sure that's market dependent and you dependent, and I don't know if you got a buddy that's a banker dependent. In my area, most of the records are not digitized. So the title agent actually had to drive several hours to the county building and manually flip through the books. Now, I ended up actually doing the same thing on my own time. I took a couple days off work and just camped out, hanging out there, right? Because I was really interested in my property and I wanted to know it through and through, right? Very few people do this, but in my experience, especially in small rural areas, the folks in the recorder's office are happy to help you because in small unpopulated counties, they often don't have a lot of visitors, right? Especially a lot of new people kind of showing up. So, feel free to, get to know your local county folks. So in conclusion, off-grid can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. There's not really an accepted definition anymore, if there ever was. But in general, I think most off-grid people tend to be DIY and self-reliant. A lot of people who want to build their own houses, dig their own septic trenches, and wire up their own solar panels, right? Some things, though, you're still going to farm out. You may want to wire up those panels, but I highly doubt you're going to make a solar panel factory yourself, right? You're gonna buy those solar panels from the people who make them, right? So with land, I think it's fair that some folks may want to DIY that purchasing process as well. And it can open up some opportunities to you that just otherwise wouldn't be available through conventional channels, right? You're going to get access and have just way more options than hanging out on Zillow or looking at listed properties, right? So if you choose to use a realtor, do it. You're probably not going to tackle every single project yourself, and there's no shame in asking for help from someone who you think can do the job better, right? Or sometimes you need to divide and conquer. Hey, you know what? I'd love to do it, but I just don't have the time. So I'm going to get somebody to help me out on that. It's fine. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. So be well, do good work that you'll be proud of.